So Connor, I'm so happy you're here in Ann Arbor to have some composition time for a new piece. But first, let's just talk about the piece you composed for the organ. And how about if you pronounce it and tell us a little bit about it?
I've titled it Hózho, which is usually translated as balance and beauty and harmony. And it's an important philosophy in Diné or Navajo life. This idea of balance and beauty sort of goes into all aspects of life. And that's something I try to transfer into the piece. I had a lot of different experiences with it growing up, different ways of trying to learn and understand the philosophy. I remember my grandmother telling me things as simple as making sure that if I had jewelry that I hung it up properly and that it wasn't all tangled, and making sure that you kept your life in order, which is something I still struggle with, but I think we all do at some point. But the idea is, when you feel out of balance, to find those ways to ground yourself and to get back into that balanced way of being, and to try and live a beautiful life.
I love just imagining your grandmother talking with you and telling you that. And when you told me that, when we were talking about creating this piece, then every time I look in my jewelry, I think, are there necklaces untangled? Connor's grandmother wouldn't be happy. And I think you told me about the shoelaces too.
Yeah, you know what? When I've seen some other elders, especially after we've had a prayer or something sacred, we usually keep it holy for 4 days afterwards. And one of the things I was told is also make sure that your shoelaces are untied, because some people have a habit of just slipping out of your shoes and leaving them tied. And that's not always the best thing, especially in those days when you're really trying to keep things organized. And it's just one of those little things that transfers over into how you conduct your whole life. When you start thinking about the little things and keeping things in place or in order, in harmony, that also transfers over into how you live your life in general. So,
Well, this theme of Hózhó, when you brought that up to me, it felt so right for this time because, we hear on the news about so much discord and division, and just finding this wisdom coming from the Diné culture seems like it has so much healing potential, and I hope would become a model. And I know when I play this music, it feels healing to me. It's calming, it's centering, it brings me to a place of harmony. And I'm really eager to play it for audiences so they can hear it too. So I had this piece is for pipe organ. And when we started talking about it, you said that you associated the pipe organ with some Diné wooden flutes, that you thought about that wind traveling through the flute. And do you mind talking about how that came to be, how you translated that into the piece?
yeah, I think just in general, the Native American flute, I think the action of the pipe organ is so similar in how the sound is created. And so that was, for me, a little bit of a starting point in how I wanted to treat the instrument in the opening, something that was very flute-like, and something that was simple without a whole lot of extra layers and harmony, at least in the very beginning of the piece. And that's also how I wanted to end it. The opening and the ending are sort of reflections of each other, to sort of showcase the balance that I tried to achieve in the piece somewhat. And it's also, a lot of times we think of balance as sort of like the scales of left and right. But from what I was told growing up and what I've experienced in Diné culture, is that the balance is seen as very circular. And so I wanted to create the piece so that almost as it ended could start over again, to reference that circular way of thinking, a circular way of balance, the same way that the seasons are kept in balance through changing in their own cycles and the cycle of life. I'm certainly not the expert and know all of all things in Native culture and in Navajo culture, but the things that I do know, I try to put into the piece. And when I'm composing and writing music, that's really my way of also connecting and learning more about the culture myself, because there is so much out there, and it's a starting point for me to reflect on things that I've been taught and things that I've learned growing up, or maybe things I didn't realize I'd been taught in certain ways that just became a way of thinking for me from my parents or my grandparents or family. And so it really gives me the opportunity to dig a little bit deeper into my own experiences, and also reach out to my family and have, conversations where I'm constantly learning more myself as I'm composing this music or coming up with new ideas.
It's so beautiful that you're sharing this outwardly, and then inwardly it's creating some growth and a deeper claiming of your heritage and your connection with your family.
Yeah, it's been great just to have, points to speak about with my family, and, connecting with my father and having conversation that happens really organically from some of these questions I have when I'm thinking of new pieces or new inspirations. That's really been a rewarding part of the process for me.
Does that even, does that get into a different sort of layer of inquiry? Because he probably realizes he's helping you with your compositions in this way. And so that's a little different than if there's just, what's this, what's that, without some other parameter going on.
Yeah, my dad, he's got a lot of knowledge and a lot of stories, but he doesn't usually share those unless I ask. And it's always surprising when I ask about something that we can organically find ways that he can start sharing all of his experiences and stories that he's had passed down to him or that he's experienced in his life. That just happens in a really natural way. I think, growing up, I didn't always know what questions to ask, or what what knowledge was out there for me to be seeking to begin with. So it's nice that eventually I was led down this path with my music, where I'm, reconnecting with everything and able to connect with my family and my dad in a special way for me.
That's so great. So the middle section of Hózho for the pipe organ is more active, and so you talked about that circular formation and how it returns to this sort of peaceful native flute sounds in the bookends of it. So can you describe the active part and what you had in mind there?
Yeah, I think in everybody's life we have these moments often that come back, which where you feel out of balance, where you're going through something difficult, or where things maybe are moving too fast in any aspect of your life. And so I wanted to put that in the piece, this sort of searching for something to be able to eventually arrive back at the beginning, in a sense, but transformed. And these experiences where we feel out of balance really do shape us and lead us in our life, and we learn from it, and it's kind of part of that. And so for me, Hózhó is about seeking that balance and beauty, and also recognizing, when you need it most, when you're not in balance, and what you're learning from that. And so I wanted to try and express that the best that I could in the middle of the piece, because I've certainly been there, and I'm sure I'll be there again very soon if I'm not there right now, later today, of feeling overwhelmed, or overworked, or just not paying attention to certain things in my life that I should be paying more attention to. And that searching really is what that middle section's about, to try and get back to the place that you're comfortable, and that everything has its place, and so that you can feel more secure and have that clarity and harmony, peace, and beauty in your life.
I find that concept of the cycle, or the circular nature of that, really helpful. I know you've talked about the shape of the hogan, the Dene dwelling place, as being in a circle, and so much so that mindset of thinking, in this moment I might be feeling chaos, but it's a cycle. It'll pass, and I can come back to a place of harmony and living in that, especially knowing how to find it or that it's there to be found.
Right. Yeah. It's like I said earlier, sometimes it's the littlest things that, when you're younger, I think that's why, my grandmother made sure to teach me, and my parents, my mom, my dad, just keeping everything organized in your life down to the littlest thing. That really does have a rippling effect into everything else you do. And even today, I can feel when I let my studio get disorderly, or, my living space getting cluttered, it really does start to affect my productivity and my own mental health. So I know, when I can get back to putting things back where they should be and having an order and a system in the space where I create, that totally transforms my mental state, my state of being, and my ability to be creative. And it's a constant battle with me because as I work, I can definitely have a habit of letting things get out of order. My dad still reminds me today when things are, getting a little too cluttered, or that I need to focus on realigning everything around me. And that's also when I usually need to realign something spiritually or mentally in my life. And so it's always good to have that starting point to place these ideas and these philosophies in a very immediate and tangible way around you, to then, be surrounded by something that feels good and be able to achieve something else spiritually. I'm really grateful for those things, and I've always keeping them in mind, even when I'm not living, to these philosophies to my fullest. I always do come back to them eventually to get everything straightened out and be in a better place.
I wanted to ask you about two things about numbers. So you said that the number 4 is sacred to Dene culture. And then I also wanted to ask about pentatonicism in Native melodies, particularly Navajo melodies, and how that plays out in your compositions.
Yeah, the melodies are mostly pentatonic. Traditionally, a lot of the Navajo songs that I've heard and that my grandfather sings have a pentatonic melody. That's something I try to keep in my music as well. It's sort of it's a reference to, the music that comes from the culture, and also a way for me to challenge myself because it's a smaller collection of notes to create melodies from. So sometimes that's tricky. The harmonies that I put underneath are not pentatonic, but the melodies I usually try to keep mostly pentatonic. And as far as the sacredness of the number 4, it's something that is also in many aspects of Dene life, because there's 4 directions, and we have 4 sacred mountains and 4 sacred stones. And in the traditional chants and songs, often things are repeated 4 times. And so that number, whether it's in the music or in the way that we build our homes or structure our life, the number 4 always comes back a lot. And that's something I also try to put in my music, whether it's through the repetition or the distance between the notes, the intervals that I use. That's something that I sort of put into the structure or the foundation of a lot of the music that I write that's inspired by Navajo life.
So the very end of the piece, you have what would be a 4th scale degree that melts into the tonic or the home pitch. And I find that such an incredibly peaceful way to end. I mean, I often, when I play it, then I just have to sit in silence for a while because it has sort of restored that sense of balance, and I long for that, just even that moment of peace before moving on to, okay, what's the next project? So thank you for bringing that peace, and I really hope that, as people listen, they'll be able to find it within themselves too, as a gift that you're giving.
Well, thank you
through
so
your
much. Yeah.
composition.
Thank you.